You are listening to HOA Citation Circus. She used a clipboard like a warrant. Karen screamed that my name was going in the minutes as a warning to everyone. I am not debating you, I am issuing the notice. Her voice hit a pitch that made my neighbor's dog start barking from 2 houses down. She was standing on my porch with a clipboard, a laminated policy sheet, and a mesh evidence tote that looked like she had just won a prize at a county fair. I had opened my door expecting maybe a delivery guy or a neighbor asking to borrow a ladder. Instead, I got Paige Holloway, compliance chair of the Willow Bend Neighborhood Association here in Omaha, Nebraska, and she was accusing me of stealing packages and checking car door handles in the neighborhood like I was some kind of low-rent criminal. The whole thing kicked off because management had asked me for a statement about a rash of thefts from cars near the mail kiosk, and before I could even answer, Paige interrupted and answered for me, claiming I was being singled out because I act suspicious. Now she was on my porch with a bogus hearing notice she was waving like a warrant, and she had already told me I had until midnight tonight to cure the violations or daily fines would start tomorrow. My work van was parked in my driveway behind her. I am a cable installer, and the idea that I would risk my job and my reputation over a bag of pool wristbands was so insane I almost laughed. But Paige was not joking. She slammed a red stamp down on a sheet of paper on her clipboard like a judge passing sentence, then shoved the paper at me. It was a copy of a complaint form with my address printed at the top and a list of accusations that made my stomach drop. Trespassing in the clubhouse, tampering with mail kiosk cameras, possession of stolen HOA property. I had done none of those things, not one. Paige turned on her heel and marched back toward the street, calling over her shoulder that she had already reported this, and that my camera does not matter because her minutes are the truth. I stood there with the notice in my hand, reading through the bullet points again, trying to make sense of it. The stolen item in question was described as a bag of new pool wristbands that had gone missing from a storage closet in the clubhouse. According to the complaint, a neighbor had seen the bag near my property line 2 days ago. That was the entire basis for the accusation. No photo, no witness statement attached, just a single sentence on a form. I went back inside and pulled up my doorbell camera footage from 2 days ago. I scrubbed through the entire day. Nothing. No bag, no delivery, no suspicious activity. But then I went back one more day, and there it was. A figure in a gray coat and a blue visor, walking up to my porch, setting down a cardboard mailer, pausing for a second, then picking the mailer back up and walking away. The timestamp was clear. The face was partially visible. It was Paige. She had been on my porch holding something and then she left with it. I saved the clip to 3 different places and texted a screenshot to my buddy Marcus, who works in the mailroom at the Willow Bend office. He replied in under a minute. That is wild, man. You need to see the complaint log. There is something off. I drove to the management office the next morning, which was a small brick building near the main gate on the west side of the neighborhood. The parking lot was almost empty. Inside, the waiting area had 4 plastic chairs, a coffee table covered in old HOA newsletters, and a reception desk behind a sliding glass window. Marcus was standing near the copier when I walked in, and he waved me over immediately. He pulled a file folder out of a drawer and opened it on the counter. Inside were 2 complaint forms. Both were dated the same day. Both had my address. Both accused me of the same theft, but the handwriting was different. One was printed in blocky letters, the other was in looping cursive. I held them side by side and took a photo with my phone. Marcus leaned in and whispered that Paige had submitted the first one online through the resident portal, and then she had hand-delivered the second one to the front desk an hour later, claiming the portal submission had failed. But Marcus had checked the log himself, and the portal submission was still there. 2 identical complaint forms held side by side with no readable text, and both were in the system. I asked Marcus if he could print the portal activity log for my account. He hesitated, then nodded. He turned to the computer and pulled up the back-end admin panel. He scrolled down to my account and clicked on the Activity tab. What I saw made my hands go cold. My appeal, which I had submitted the night before after Paige left my porch, was listed as opened at 9:14 in the morning. But the status next to it said deleted, and the user who deleted it was listed as admin. I asked Marcus who had admin access. He looked at me and said Paige, the property manager, and one board member. The property manager was on vacation. The board member was out of state. That left Paige. I asked Marcus to print the log and to screenshot the deletion record with the admin username visible. He did both. I folded the printouts into my jacket pocket and thanked him. He told me to be careful because Paige had been acting erratic lately, and there were whispers that inventory from the clubhouse had been going missing for months. Pool supplies, cleaning products, even petty cash from the front desk lockbox. No one had said anything publicly because Paige was the compliance chair and she controlled the violation process. If you crossed her, you ended up with a notice and a fee. I left the office and sat in my van for a minute, trying to think. The HOA had given me a cure deadline that expires tonight, and if I did not fix the violation by midnight, I would start getting hit with daily fines starting tomorrow. But I had not committed a violation. I had proof that Paige was on my porch, and I had proof that she had deleted my appeal. I also had 2 versions of the same complaint form that should not exist. I needed to take this to someone with authority, but the property manager was gone and the board was scattered. That left the police. I called the non-emergency line and explained the situation. The dispatcher told me an officer would come by within the hour to take a report. I drove home and waited. 40 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy pulled up in front of my house. I met him on the driveway and handed him the printed complaint forms, the portal log, and my phone with the doorbell footage queued up. He watched the clip twice. He made notes. He asked me if I had any idea why Paige would target me specifically. I told him I had no idea, but that other people in the neighborhood had mentioned missing items and that Paige had access to the clubhouse and the supply closets. The deputy nodded and said he would file the report and that I should keep all my evidence and avoid any direct confrontation with Paige. He gave me an incident number and told me to call if she showed up again. I thanked him and watched him drive away. Then I texted Marcus and asked if he knew anyone else who had been accused by Paige recently. He replied with a name. Tom Driscoll, a retiree who lived near the mail kiosk. Tom had been accused of tampering with the outgoing mail slot 2 months ago and had been threatened with trespassing charges. I looked up Tom's address in the neighborhood directory and drove over. Tom answered the door in a flannel shirt and jeans, looking wary. I introduced myself and explained what had happened. His face changed immediately. He invited me in and pulled out a folder from a drawer in his kitchen. Inside were copies of his own complaint forms, photos of the mail kiosk, and a printed email chain with the property manager. Tom told me that Paige had accused him of stealing outgoing mail after a package of his own had gone missing. She had claimed that security footage showed him acting suspiciously near the kiosk, but when Tom requested a copy of the footage, Paige told him it had been overwritten. Tom had hired an attorney and threatened to sue. The accusation was quietly dropped, and Tom received a written apology from the board, but no one ever explained what had really happened. I asked Tom if he still had the original complaint form. He showed me a photocopy. The handwriting was looping cursive, the same style as one of the forms Marcus had shown me. I took a picture of it and thanked Tom. He told me to watch my back because Paige does not let things go. I drove back home and started building a timeline. I laid out all the complaint forms on my kitchen table, along with the portal log, the doorbell footage screenshots, and Tom's documents. The pattern was obvious. Paige had been using her access to frame people for theft, and when they fought back, she either deleted their appeals or moved the goalposts until they gave up. But I was not giving up. I had the proof, and I had witnesses. I just needed to get it in front of the right people before midnight. At 6 that evening, my phone rang. It was Marcus. He sounded panicked. He told me that Paige had just shown up at the office demanding to see my file. The front desk clerk had refused, citing privacy rules, and Paige had started yelling. She claimed that the missing item was seen near my property and that she had the right to inspect my premises immediately. The clerk had told her that only law enforcement or the property manager could authorize that, and Paige had stormed out, threatening to call a tow company to impound my work van for being parked in the driveway overnight, which was technically against the rules but never enforced. Marcus said the clerk was shaken and that he had locked the office early. I thanked Marcus and hung up. 10 minutes later, I heard a vehicle pull up outside. I looked through the window and saw a flatbed tow truck idling in front of my house. Paige was standing next to the driver, pointing at my van and talking rapidly. I grabbed my phone, my evidence folder, and my keys and walked outside. The tow driver was a middle-aged guy in a work shirt with a company logo. I approached him calmly and asked what was going on. He said he had been called to impound a vehicle for a violation. I asked to see the work order. He handed me a clipboard with a printed form. The vehicle description matched my van, but the authorization signature line was blank. I pointed that out. The tow driver frowned and looked at Paige. She said the authorization was verbal and that she had the authority as compliance chair. I asked the driver if that was standard procedure. He said no, he normally needed a signed authorization or a police request. I handed him my phone with the incident report number visible and explained that I had filed a report earlier that day regarding false accusations. The driver looked uncomfortable. He told Paige he was not hooking the vehicle without proper paperwork and that she needed to go through the property manager. Paige's face went red. She started yelling that she had already reported this and that the driver was interfering with HOA enforcement. The driver got back in his truck and drove away. Paige turned on me and said I was making this worse and that she would have me trespassed from the management office waiting area if I kept interfering. I did not respond. I turned around and walked back inside. Through the window, I watched Paige stand in the street for another minute talking on her phone before finally getting into her car and driving away. I sat down at the kitchen table and checked the time. It was 7:30. I had less than 5 hours until the cure deadline. I needed to force a resolution tonight, and the only way to do that was to go public. I opened my laptop and logged into the neighborhood Facebook group. I posted a short message. I have been falsely accused of theft by the HOA compliance chair. I have doorbell footage, complaint forms, and a sheriff's incident report that prove the accusation is fabricated. I am sharing this now because my deadline to cure is midnight tonight, and I will not pay fines for something I did not do. If anyone else has experienced similar accusations, please contact me. I attached the doorbell screenshot, the side-by-side complaint forms with no readable text, and the incident report number. I hit post and waited. Within 10 minutes, the post had 15 comments. 3 people said they had also been accused by Paige in the past year. 2 said they had paid fines just to make it go away. One person, a woman named Sandra, said Paige had tried to get her towed last month for parking in a guest spot overnight, even though Sandra had a valid guest pass. Another person said they had seen Paige removing items from the clubhouse storage closet late at night and loading them into her car. The comments kept coming. By 8 o'clock, the post had over 50 reactions and 20 comments. People were angry. Someone tagged the HOA president in the comments and demanded an emergency board meeting. Someone else said they were filing a complaint with the state HOA oversight board. I refreshed the page and saw a new comment from Marcus. He had posted a photo of the portal activity log showing the deleted appeal with the admin username visible. He wrote, "This is not right. People deserve transparency." At 8:45, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed on my phone first. It was Paige. She was standing on my porch with her mesh evidence tote and her phone in her hand, holding it up like she was recording. I opened the door but left the screen door latched. Paige immediately started talking in a loud, narrating voice, as if she were doing a news report. She said she was documenting my refusal to cooperate and that my behavior was evidence of guilt. She held the phone inches from the screen door, tilting it up and down to capture my face. I stayed calm and said I was not refusing anything, and that I had already provided a statement to law enforcement. Paige said the statement did not matter because the HOA had its own process and that I was in violation regardless of what the police said. She waved the laminated policy sheet again, close to the camera but not close enough for me to read it. I asked her to state clearly what she wanted. She said she wanted access to my garage and my work van to verify that I was not in possession of stolen HOA property. I told her that was not going to happen without a warrant. She said I was obstructing an investigation and that she was adding that to the complaint. I pulled out my phone and started recording her. She immediately stepped back and said I was harassing her. I kept the camera on her and asked her to explain why there were two versions of the same complaint form in the system. She hesitated. I asked her to explain why my appeal had been deleted by an admin account while the property manager was on vacation. She said that was a technical error and that I was twisting the facts. I asked her if she had been on my porch 3 days ago. She said she had no idea what I was talking about. I played the doorbell footage on my phone and held it up so she could see. Her face changed. She said the footage was edited and that I had no proof of anything. I told her the footage was time-stamped and backed up in 3 places and that the sheriff's deputy had already reviewed it. She said she was done talking and that I would be hearing from the HOA attorney. She turned and walked away, still holding her phone up like a shield. I went back inside and uploaded the recording of the porch confrontation to my laptop. Then I sent copies of everything: doorbell footage, complaint forms, portal logs, Tom's documents, the tow incident, and the new recording to the HOA president's email with a subject line that read, "Urgent, compliance chair abuse of authority and evidence of fraud." I CC'd the property manager and the entire board. I explained in the email that I had been falsely accused, that I had proof of the false accusation, and that the compliance chair had deleted my appeal and attempted to intimidate me with threats of fines, towing, and trespassing. I requested an immediate investigation and a written retraction of all accusations. I hit send at 9:20. Then I sat back and waited. At 10:15, I got a reply from the HOA president. It was short: "I have received your email and the attachments. This is extremely concerning. I am scheduling an emergency call with the board tonight. Do not pay any fines. We will follow up within 24 hours. I felt a wave of relief but also exhaustion. It was not over yet. I still had to make it to midnight without Paige doing something else crazy. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, refreshing my email and checking the Facebook group. The post was still blowing up. Someone had created a petition to remove Paige from the compliance chair position. It already had 30 signatures. At 11:10, Marcus texted me, "Dude, check the portal." I logged into the resident portal on my laptop. My account page loaded. The violation notice was gone. In its place was a message from the property manager, time-stamped 15 minutes ago. "All accusations related to case number 47A have been retracted pending investigation. No fines will be assessed. Your account is clear." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then let out a breath I did not know I was holding. It was done. The accusation was off my record. But I wanted more than that. I wanted Paige to face consequences. The next morning, I got an email from the HOA president with the board CC'd. It was long and formal. The email stated that the board had conducted an emergency review of my case and had found significant irregularities in the complaint process. Specifically, the board had discovered that multiple complaints filed by the compliance chair over the past 6 months contained inconsistencies, including duplicate submissions, deleted appeals, and missing authorization signatures. The board had also reviewed security footage from the clubhouse and discovered evidence of unauthorized removal of HOA property by the compliance chair on multiple occasions. As a result, Paige Holloway had been removed from her position as compliance chair effective immediately and was under investigation for theft and abuse of authority. The email went on to say that I would receive a formal written apology and that all records related to the false accusation would be expunged. The board also thanked me for bringing the issue to their attention and said that new oversight procedures were being implemented to prevent future abuse. I forwarded the email to Tom, to Marcus, and to Sandra from the Facebook group. Then I printed a copy and put it in my evidence folder. 2 days later, Marcus called me and said the gate staff worker who monitors vehicle access had reported that Paige could not suspend my access because the board had reinstated it and flagged her account. Paige had shown up at the gate that morning trying to have my entry code deactivated, and the gate worker had refused. Paige had started yelling, and the gate worker had called the property manager, who told Paige to leave immediately or the police would be called. Marcus said Paige had left in her car, slamming the gate remote against the steering wheel. Later that week, I got a call from Tom. He told me that another neighbor, a guy named Ethan who lived near the mailbox cluster, had gone to the sheriff's office to file his own report against Paige. Ethan had discovered that a package containing expensive headphones had been delivered to his address and then reported missing the same day. Ethan had checked his doorbell camera and found footage of Paige walking up to his porch, picking up the package, and walking away with it tucked under her arm. Ethan's footage was even clearer than mine. The timestamp matched a day when Paige had filed a complaint accusing Ethan of leaving trash bins out past pickup time. Ethan had paid the fine just to avoid hassle, but now he was furious. Tom said Ethan was planning to file a civil suit. I told Tom that I hoped Ethan nailed her. The following week, the HOA held a special board meeting to address the investigation findings. I did not attend in person, but Marcus sent me updates by text. The board had hired a third-party auditor to review the clubhouse inventory and the compliance records. The auditor found that over $2,000 in petty cash, supplies, and pool equipment had gone missing over the past year, with the thefts concentrated during periods when Paige had access to the storage closets. The auditor also found that Paige had submitted at least 7 fraudulent complaints against residents, 4 of which had resulted in paid fines. The board voted to refer the findings to law enforcement and to terminate Paige's membership on any HOA committee permanently. The board also voted to refund all fines paid by residents who had been targeted by Paige's false complaints. I got a check in the mail for $250 2 weeks later, even though I had never paid the original fine. The memo line said, "Settlement and apology." I deposited it and used the money to buy a better doorbell camera with cloud backup and higher resolution. If you are enjoying this wild ride, hit that like button and subscribe because I have more stories about HOA chaos you would not believe. 3 weeks after the board meeting, I was walking to my mailbox at the cluster near the front gate when I saw Paige's car pull into the parking lot. My heart rate spiked, but I kept walking. Paige got out of her car holding a cardboard box and walked toward the mailboxes. She saw me and froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she started walking faster, heading straight for me. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app, holding it at waist level. Paige stopped about 10 feet away and said she wanted to talk. I said I had nothing to say to her. She said I had ruined her reputation and that people in the neighborhood were treating her like a criminal. I told her that she had ruined her own reputation by stealing and lying. She said she had never stolen anything and that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. I asked her if the doorbell footage was a misunderstanding. She said the footage was taken out of context. I asked her if the duplicate complaint forms were taken out of context. She did not answer. She just stood there, holding the box, her face tight with anger. Then she said I should be careful because people who make accusations sometimes end up regretting it. I told her that sounded like a threat and that I was recording the conversation. She looked down at my phone and her expression shifted. She said she was not threatening anyone and that I was twisting her words. Then she turned and walked back to her car, got in and drove away. I stood there for a minute, watching her taillights disappear around the corner, then walked back to my house and uploaded the recording to my cloud backup. Just in case. A month later, I was at the management office dropping off a rent check when I saw a notice on the bulletin board. Paige Holloway had been formally charged with theft and fraud by the county prosecutor. The notice was brief and did not include details, but it listed a court date in 6 weeks. Marcus saw me reading it and walked over. He said the prosecutor had combined evidence from my case, Ethan's case, and 2 other residents who had come forward after the board meeting. The total value of the stolen property was over $3,000, which was enough to elevate the charges to a felony. Marcus said Paige had hired an attorney and was fighting it, but the evidence was overwhelming. I asked Marcus if he thought she would go to jail. He shrugged and said probably not jail, but definitely probation, restitution, and a permanent record. I thanked Marcus for everything he had done to help me. He said he was just glad the truth came out and that people were finally paying attention to HOA abuse. I left the office and drove home, feeling like a weight had been lifted. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel like I was waiting for the next shoe to drop. The court hearing happened in early spring. I did not attend, but Tom did, and he texted me updates throughout the morning. Paige pled no contest to reduce charges of petty theft and filing false reports. She was sentenced to 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, plus court costs. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order preventing Paige from holding any position of authority in any homeowners association in the state. Tom said Paige cried during the sentencing and tried to give a speech about how the HOA had scapegoated her, but the judge cut her off and said the evidence was clear. Paige's attorney requested leniency based on her lack of prior record, and the judge agreed to probation instead of jail time, but made it clear that any violation of the probation terms would result in immediate incarceration. Tom said Paige left the courtroom looking broken. I felt a flicker of something, maybe pity, but it passed quickly. She had tried to destroy my reputation, cost me my job, and frame me for crimes I did not commit. The consequences she faced were fair. That same week, I got a certified letter from the HOA attorney. It was a formal apology on law firm letterhead, signed by the entire board. The letter stated that the HOA had conducted a full review of the compliance process and had found that I had been subjected to harassment, false accusations, and procedural violations. The letter went on to say that the HOA had retracted all accusations in writing, cleared my ledger of any fines or penalties, and implemented new policies to prevent future abuse, including mandatory training for all committee members, third-party audits of all enforcement actions, and a transparent appeals process with board oversight. The letter ended with an offer of a one-time credit of $500 toward my HOA dues as a settlement for the distress I had experienced. I accepted the credit and filed the letter in my evidence folder. A few days later, I ran into Sandra at the neighborhood pool. She was setting up a lounge chair near the deep end when she saw me and waved. She came over and thanked me for speaking up. She said that after my Facebook post, 3 other people had come forward with their own stories about Paige, and the board had been forced to take action. Sandra said she had been afraid to say anything before because she did not think anyone would believe her. I told her I understood and that I had felt the same way. She said the neighborhood felt different now, like people were paying attention and holding leadership accountable. I told her I hoped it stayed that way. Over the next few months, things slowly returned to normal. I kept my doorbell camera running 24/7 and saved every clip to the cloud. I stayed active in the neighborhood Facebook group and kept an eye on HOA announcements. The board elected a new compliance chair, a retired teacher named Bill who seemed reasonable and who promised to run the committee with transparency and fairness. The new property manager instituted monthly town halls where residents could ask questions and raise concerns directly. Attendance was high at first, then tapered off as people realized the drama was over. I went to a few of the town halls and asked questions about the new appeals process and the audit findings. The answers were satisfying. The board was taking things seriously. One evening in late summer, I was working in my garage when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out and saw a sedan I did not recognize. A woman got out, walked up to my driveway, and knocked on the garage frame. It was Paige. My first instinct was to close the garage door and call the police, but then I saw her face. She looked exhausted, older, and defeated. She said she knew she was not supposed to contact me because of the restraining order, but she wanted to apologize in person. I told her she needed to leave immediately or I would call law enforcement. She said she understood and that she would go, but she wanted me to know that she was sorry and that she had been under a lot of stress and had made terrible decisions. She said she had been dealing with financial problems and personal issues and that she had let it spiral out of control. I did not say anything. She stood there for another moment, then turned and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, then went inside and called the non-emergency line to report the contact. The dispatcher said they would log it and notify her probation officer. I never saw Paige again after that. A year after the whole ordeal started, I got an email from Ethan. He said his civil suit against Paige had been settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, and that Paige had agreed to a permanent ban from any HOA-related activities as part of the settlement. Ethan also said he had used some of the settlement money to install security cameras around his property and to donate to a local legal aid organization that helps people fight HOA abuse. I replied and thanked him for the update and for fighting back. He said he was just glad it was over and that he hoped the neighborhood had learned something from the experience. I hoped so too. Looking back, the whole thing felt surreal. It had started with a scream on my porch and a bogus notice, and it had ended with felony charges, a certified letter trail that showed Karen's dates did not match, and a complete reversal of everything Paige had tried to do. The HOA retracting the accusation in writing and clearing the ledger felt like a victory, but the real win was watching Paige's attempt to intimidate a neighbor backfire and watching that neighbor report it to the authorities. The funny karma beat came when Paige had insisted on a deadline for me to cure the violations, and then her own printed notice contradicted her timeline when the board auditor compared it to the portal submission log. She had been so confident in her authority that she had not even bothered to keep her lies consistent. That sloppiness was what sank her. In the end, justice was not fast, and it was not easy, but it was real. I kept my evidence folder in a file cabinet in my home office, just in case I ever needed it again. I hoped I would not, but after everything I had been through, I knew better than to assume the HOA drama was gone forever. For now, though, things were quiet. The neighborhood was peaceful. My work van sat in the driveway without threat of being towed. My doorbell camera recorded nothing more dramatic than delivery drivers and the occasional stray cat. And every time I walked past the mailbox cluster, I remembered the moment I had stood my ground and refused to let a corrupt compliance chair destroy my life. It felt good. I appreciate you hearing me out, and I will catch you next time.